Hey guys, my name is Iasmina and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is top 10 tips for new writers. So I've been writing since I was about 8 years old. Now, when I say that, I don't mean I wrote seriously when I was 8 years old, but you know what I mean. Like, I started writing silly little stories around 8 years old, but I started writing seriously when I was a teenager. And back then I used to write everything. I used to write short stories, poems, novels, although at that time I didn't know how to finish a novel, I didn't know how to plan a novel, and I just kind of started and then it just went nowhere and I would stop. Obviously you can take this with a grain of salt because every person is different, but it's just some general tips that I think will help you as a new writer. First thing, and what I think is the most important, is to read everything you can get your hands on. I cannot say how important this really is, and I think especially when you have these ideas in your head and you know, oh, I want to write something, I don't think you realize at the time, you know, how important it is to actually read before you jump into writing. If you know what the genre of the book you're thinking about writing is, then definitely start by reading, you know, some of the most popular books in the genre that are out there right now. But more than that, definitely read outside of your genre, outside of your comfort zone. A, you'll never know what you're gonna find and it might become your new favorite book. But two, part of being a writer is having this vast pool of knowledge of different writing styles, different characters, different authors, different point of views from all over the world. And you can't get that if you stick to one specific genre or one specific author or one specific series. You know, you have to read everything. And little bits from all of those different genres, all of those different books will come together to help form your own writing style. You have to experience stories in order to write your own. So, read everything. My second tip is to get involved in the writing community. Find a community of writers somewhere. You know, it can be on Twitter, it can be on YouTube, it can be on Reddit. There's so many communities out there. Obviously NaNoWriMo is a separate thing in its own, or better yet, in real life. I also went, as a teenage writer myself, I went to a creative writing class and I learned some cool things there, and I met people who also enjoyed writing, and it was a fun time. So, you know, do things like that. Get to know people who write, because again, all of these things will help, and knowing other people who do the same thing that you do is very, very helpful. On the same note, and in relation to the second point, I'm not sure if it should be a separate point in its own, but anyway, is find a writing buddy. So if you're getting involved in the writing community, I'm sure at some point you will stumble across someone that you will like, you know, as a writing buddy, and reach out to that person and find someone that you can contact easily, you know, like message or something. You have to have someone, whether, you know, in real life or online, you should have someone to reach out to, someone to complain to, because only that person will really understand what you're going through. People who don't write will not understand. They might be nice and listen and offer their perspective, but it might not be the perspective you need or want. So it's really important to have someone that you can talk to about writing. And at the same time, obviously, if you have that, then you can also critique each other's work and just grow together. Third point is to experiment and try new things. And along the same lines is don't get hung up on one idea. So usually, and this is what happened to me, and I think this is what happens to a lot of people, when they think they want to write or they want to start writing, it's because they have an idea for a book. That's it. They don't know anything really about the process of writing, or they haven't even written much apart from, you know, homework or whatever before. But they just have an idea. That's a perfectly good reason to start writing. Most of the time, that initial idea that we had, the first ever idea that made you really want to write that book, that will probably not work out. Probably. Not to say that it won't, because it might, but probably not. In which case you should not get hung up on that idea and try and fail again and again because you're really attached to that idea and you really think you can make it right, you can make it work. You might just not have the right experience yet. Especially if you're a new writer, some ideas that we have are way beyond our initial reach, way beyond our initial skill, and that's probably why whatever you've done already, whatever you've written, you feel like it's just not good enough, or you just can't get it right. You know, that idea that you had in your head is not what you have written on paper. And maybe sometimes the reason is your skill is just not there yet. So you might want to just park that idea. Don't get rid of it, but park it and try new things instead. Try writing shorter fiction. That's what I did as a teenager, and I think that really helped because, again, I could not finish a novel for the life of me. I tried so many times and I couldn't. So instead I was like, all right, screw that, I'm just gonna try short fiction. And I wrote so many random short stories and poems and things like that. It really helped a lot because I learned how to tell a story from beginning to end and how to write the middle and things, even though it was a very short story. If something is not working, don't give up. Please don't give up. Don't think I'm a terrible writer, this isn't for me. Maybe take a break, you know, if you're really like stressed about it, but then try something else before you get back to the thing that you think isn't working. Yeah. My next point is to form a habit of writing. So this is not just specific advice for new writers, this is advice for any writer and for anyone trying to do anything. I think it's really important to form a habit of doing that thing. Everyone procrastinates. Everyone has a million other things that they think about and that they want to do. I know that's the case for me. I have way too many hobbies, way too many things that I like doing. And sometimes writing takes the back seat because, oh, I want to do that, or I don't feel like writing today. That's a bit dangerous because maybe once, you know, if you say today, I'm not going to write because I don't feel like it, but you've written every other day for 2 weeks, that's fine. But if you keep doing that and keep saying, oh, today I don't feel like it, today I don't feel like it, A, you'll never get anything done, but B, I know there's a certain thing that goes on in our brains where if we form a habit of doing something at around the same time every day, the same thing, it's very hard to get out of that habit. And the dangerous thing is that if you do get out of the habit, it's even more difficult to get back on it. I would highly suggest for you to form a habit. Pick a time and a place, whatever works best for you, and just set aside, you don't have to set aside a long time, just set aside 30 minutes or however long you think you want to write on an average day. Just set 30 minutes aside and then form a habit of sitting at your desk and staring at that page or that laptop screen and try to write for 30 minutes. If you write 3 words, if you write 1,000 words, it doesn't really matter as long as you have written. And that will form a really nice habit for you, and in time you will stretch that 30 minutes to an hour to 2 hours, who knows. The important thing is that you'll feel satisfied that you did something, you got work done. My next tip is to research your options. So naturally, at some point when you are in the process of writing, there will come a time where you will start thinking about actually getting that book, getting that writing into the hands of others. First of all, obviously, if you have a writing buddy, you should totally utilize that and send the piece of writing to them and get some feedback, and obviously offer to do the same for them. And that's a nice exchange, and that can be a really good form of preliminary editing also. Because at some point, you do need outside opinions. It's very easy to let it all stew in your head, and you will probably get the sense that it's all terrible when it probably isn't. It's just that you've seen it and you've worked on it for so long that it'll just start looking like a big pile of trash. But to someone else's eyes, it's not a big pile of trash. It's a diamond. That's a weird analogy. You know what I mean. At some point, you need someone else to come and see it. But in that situation, you have to know your options. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way. I'm just saying you should research and know what's available to you, know what's a good option, because obviously there's 2 main ways to get your work out there. Traditional publishing and self-publishing. And a lot of new writers just don't even think about it and just go with self-publishing, because then that piece of writing can be available to purchase or available for other people to read today. That's not the best way to do it though, and I will definitely make a separate video all about self-publishing and traditional publishing. There is no best or wrong way, like I said, but you have to know all of this before you are able to make an informed decision, so research your options. Depending on how you want to get that piece of writing out there, you might want to publish it in a magazine. That's a completely different thing. My next tip kind of goes with the one before it, and that is to be informed on what's going on in the industry. So if you reach the point where you're thinking about publishing, or if that book that you wrote or the story that you wrote you think has potential to be published, in general I think you should just be informed on what's going on. So one way of doing that is obviously reading a lot. Read new releases, and then you'll kind of get to see patterns on what's being published, what's popular. Obviously if you are involved in the writing community, then you might see and get information on things that are happening. But the thing is, the industry changes all the time. What people like to read or what people like to publish changes all the time, and I'm not saying you should write for the market, because that works for some people, definitely, but I think that's the wrong approach, especially when you're a new writer. I don't think you should write for the market, I just think you should write for yourself. But it is important to know what's going on in the market. There's been a time when, a couple of years ago, self-publishing was considered a bad idea because self-published books didn't sell, or it was a tainted kind of title to have because anyone can self-publish. But now it's a completely viable way to go about it, and a lot of people prefer that over traditional publishing, even though they could totally go that way, but they just prefer to self-publish. Sometimes it's because the genre of the book that they have sells better in self-publishing area than in traditional publishing. That's completely true. Look at romance novels, erotica, even fantasy. As far as I've seen, they sell much better self-published than traditionally published. Try to find out where you stand in there, where your book stands in the industry, and going along with my previous point, then try to see what options you have based on that knowledge, and then hopefully you'll make a really informed decision. My next tip is to invest in yourself and in your writing career, your writing journey. For writing purposes, you don't need a fancy writing software, but even nowadays, you have to pay for Word, the cloud subscription thing, right? Obviously you can just do pen and paper, or you can do, the notepad. You don't have to, but these programs definitely help. And so I think it's a good idea to invest in them. I've made a separate video about the best writing tools and things like that, so I'll link it up here and down in the description if you're interested in that. Invest in that, and invest in your writing in general. For example, I don't know where you're writing at, like which space you're writing at. Maybe you're writing at the coffee table or the kitchen table or somewhere, but I think at some point, if you're really serious about this, you should invest in creating the perfect space for your writing, which might mean, getting a new desk or converting a corner of one of your rooms into a dedicated writing space. And I want you to feel like that's okay, because I know sometimes you feel like maybe what we're doing is an excess, or this idea that we have, it's nothing serious, so I'm not gonna put all of that effort and money into it because, I don't know if I'm gonna do this, and that's fair. But I think at some point, if this is serious enough, and at that point I think you should definitely invest in it and create the space that you feel best writing in, because that's really important, because then you'll want to write more and more and more. And also invest in yourself, again, spend money on yourself, on getting all the knowledge that you need and all the information that you need. Obviously some things cost money, and that's just how it is, but for example, go to writing conferences, that costs money, that's an expense. You might not want to do that, but it will definitely help you, and if you think it will, then that's definitely a good idea to invest in that. My next tip is to take care of yourself. Again, this kind of goes with my previous point, to invest in yourself, but this is kind of different, because no matter what our passions are, no matter what our hobbies are, sometimes we get to a point where we take it really seriously and it starts making us anxious, it starts making us stressed. Regardless of the reason, sometimes there really isn't a valid reason, but it doesn't mean that it's invalid that you're stressed or you're anxious. Relax and take the time that you need and do some self-care. The whole point of this is we should write because we love writing, and when you feel like you're starting to hate writing, that's when you should probably take a break for yourself and do some self-care and not think about it for a while. And then hopefully you'll get back to it in due time and get that excitement back. Okay, so don't let it stress you too much, especially as a new writer. You shouldn't be stressed about anything anyway, but I know it happens and it's unavoidable at some point. I just want you to remember that it's okay and that you can just take some time off for yourself and relax and do other things. Do other things. I think I've lost count at this point of how many tips so if it's a bit less or a bit more than 10, then I apologize. I'm just like spewing things at you. My next point is to take your time. Especially as a new writer, please, 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 please don't feel like you need to get that book out there tomorrow. Please don't feel the need to, have this be the only book you've ever written and you have to write it really, really fast, and you don't need editing, you don't need all of that, you have to do this now. No, please don't think like that. Writing is a skill that I don't think you'll ever perfect. I think it's one of those things that you're always constantly improving at, and the more you write, the better you will be. So especially as a new writer, don't think you have to publish the first thing that you've ever written. It might be good, I'm not saying it's not, but you don't need to, and the best thing is to just write the next thing and don't think about it too much. My point is, don't set these sometimes impossible goals on yourself that you have to publish a book by the time you're 18 or 20 or whatever. Don't do that to yourself, because it's not important. This is a kind of business where it doesn't matter how old or how young you are. Anyone can do it at any point, and the more experience you have, the more you've written. Maybe the older you are, if you have written all that time, then the better the end product will be. Just take your time and write. And that goes nicely into my last point, whatever number this is to write, and then again, write some more. Obviously, the main point is that you want to write, so write. A lot of the times, all of the business side, all the extra stuff that goes into writing sometimes takes focus away from the actual point of all of this, which is writing. I know it does for me. I stress about all the other things, and then I forget that, oh wait, I have to actually sit down and do the writing part, which it's in the name, you have to do the writing part to be a writer, but sometimes you forget about that because of all the other stuff. So write and write some more from that habit, and have fun writing. That's it. I don't know, whatever number this is, whatever number tip this is, that's actually even more important. Have fun. It has to be the most important tip, because if you're not having fun writing, then why are you doing this? There will always be speed bumps along the way. It's completely natural, but as long as you go back to this being a really fun way to spend your time, then you're doing it right. Okay, I think those were my hopefully 10 tips. Might be more, might be less, I'm not sure. I hope this video was helpful for you, especially if you're a new writer. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed listening to me ramble for over 30 minutes. I'm not sure how short this video will be, because I'll try to edit all of that down, but this is literally me talking non-stop for over 30 minutes. Let me know down in the comments, what are your number one tips that you would advise new writers, or what are from your experience, what is the most important thing that you have learned about writing? That was it for me today. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you have a great day, and I hope you go up there and write some words. Doesn't matter if they're good or bad, just write some words. See you next time. Bye.